Good tidings, ladies and gentlemen of the Lodge, and welcome back! Today we are continuing our Hero's Journey series, where we zoom in on our favorite heroes and analyze their journey every step of the way. Our hero of choice today is none other than Riku, from Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. But before we move forward, as a preface, I must mention that the hero's journey as we know it was put forth by Joseph Campbell in his internationally acclaimed book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It outlines how many of our favorite heroes, despite their differences, all experience the same patterns and structure on their adventures. The model you see on screen is the one that I will be using, as it outlines both the hero's inner and outer journeys. To help you follow, the outer journey will be listed in gold, while the inner journey will be listed in purple along the bottom. So without further ado, let's dive on into Riku's journey, starting with Step 1. Ordinary World. Unawareness of the problem. The story starts with Sora and Riku at Master Yensid's tower, seeking guidance for what the future may hold. This is as ordinary as the world gets for our heroes, as there are no pressing matters to attend to yet. Riku is unaware of the problems he is set to face, both in the present and the future, but that all changes quickly here, in Step 2. Call to Adventure. Increased Awareness. Yensid brings Riku and Sora up to speed on Master Xehanort, increasing their awareness of this overarching problem. He enlightens them that in order for them to succeed against Master Xehanort, Sora and Riku would have to become Keyblade Masters. But then Yensid shines a light on an even bigger issue, that Sora and Riku are self-taught Keyblade wielders, but to truly become Keyblade Masters, they must unlearn everything they know about the Keyblade and begin with a clean slate.
Which is why you, Sora and Riku, are to be tested for the mark of a true Keyblade Master. No doubt you fancy yourselves masters already, but it takes years of training. Only a true master can teach you the proper way. Both of you are self-taught Keyblade wielders, an impressive feat. However, the time has come for you to let go of preconceived notions, forget what you know about the Keyblade, and begin your training again with a clean slate.
Huh? This serves as our hero's call to adventure, and their knee-jerk reaction will move us into our next step. Step 3. Refusal of the call, fear and resistance to change. And right on command, we see everyone, Riku, Sora, Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, each react with a sense of shock at the idea that, in a sense, Riku and Sora must start over. While Riku might have feared the change and initially resisted it, it doesn't take him long to understand what Master Yensid is getting at. Take note on the difference between Sora and Riku's reactions, as it holds massive foreshadowing for what is to come.
But that's a formality, right? I already proved myself. Me and the King and Riku, we can take on anything. Right, Riku?
I don't know. I think that in my heart, darkness still has a hold. Walking that path changed me. I'm not sure if I'm ready to wield a Keyblade. Maybe I do need to be tested.
Sora, in his naive arrogance, believes he has already proven himself. He fails to see the change in himself that needs to be made, and we all know where that gets him. Riku, on the other hand, had fear struck into his heart. Upon a self-examination, he realizes that he does need to be tested, and that there are things about him that need to change moving forward, which will lead us into our next step. Meeting the Mentor. Overcoming fear. In the acceptance of this new task, this solidifies Yensid as the mentor of our journey, as he is the one who has laid out the Mark of Mastery exam, and his words were the catalyst to Riku realizing that there are things about himself that must change for him to be a master. The acceptance of this task and of his shortcomings are the first steps for Riku in overcoming his fear of the darkness that still remains within him, and his fear of having to unlearn and relearn everything he knows about the Keyblade. What I find really cool about this step is the fact that Yensid is not pulling any punches here. Sora and Riku were self-taught Keyblade wielders, and while it's been implied in earlier games, I feel it's right here that Jensen solidifies himself as Riku and Sora's master, which leads us to the next step. Crossing the threshold, committing to change. This section of the journey is going to take us to Traverse Town. Simply put, by engaging in the Mark of Mastery exam, Riku has crossed the threshold and has committed to the change he needs to commit in order to pass the exam and become a master. Off the bat, we bump into Joshua, and we quickly learn that this trip to Traverse Town is going to be a little different than previous visits. New faces and new enemies appear, which will move us into our next step. As per usual, this next step in the journey is pretty self-explanatory and is the same in nearly every single Kingdom Hearts game, and that's number 6, tests, allies, and enemies, experimenting with new conditions. This step in the journey is going to cover the bulk of Riku's journey throughout the Disney worlds. This is where Riku meets new allies, goes through several rigorous tests, as well as many different enemies. Along the way, we gain new abilities and confront unique circumstances that allow Riku to experiment with new conditions. The Dream Eaters come to mind. Even though this is just one step, it does for the most part carry us all the way to our return to Traverse Town, which brings us to step number 7, approach of the inmost cave, preparing for major change. The most important part of our revisit to Traverse Town is the wisdom that Joshua bestows upon Riku. What Joshua tells us changes our entire perception of the reality surrounding us. At first, we were led to believe that Sora and Riku were traversing through parallel worlds. Instead, through observing inconsistencies in the flows of time, Joshua is able to decipher that instead, Sora and Riku are traveling through a dreamscape, worlds made of dreams. And while they may look and seem identical, they are very much their own. I think part of what makes Riku so enjoyable in this story is, unlike Sora, he's actually pretty quick to understand these things. Even Joshua takes note of that.
It's like the same world imagined by two people. What does that tell you? That we're in...
The dream.
Yes. Bravo again, Riku.
Once filled in on the scenario, despite the fact that this new information shatters what Riku previously thought, he's quick to accept the task at hand and spur himself right back into battle. To ensure Riku understood the implications of this new information, Joshua bids him farewell with a final warning, preparing Riku for major change to come.
Riku, remember what I say. Be careful. If this really is a dream, it's going to lie to you, to try and make you think it's real.
I got it.
What? I don't got it.
You and Sora would break your heads on this one.
This leads us into our next step. Step number 8. Ordeal, Death and Rebirth. Attempt at big change. This sequence is initiated when we find Sora trapped within his own dreams, and we attempt to save him. After fending off a nightmare, Ansem's voice arrives to clarify that it is in fact Sora's dreams that we've been traversing through, and that Sora's heart either now or will soon belong to the darkness. We then see the beginning of Riku's death and rebirth cycle, when he sinks into a pit of darkness to find Ansem, the man who possessed him when he initially gave into the darkness in the past. Ansem in many ways is a symbol of the darkness inside of Riku. The rebirth begins once Riku is made aware that he is indeed Sora's Dream Eater. Being Sora's Dream Eater, it was Riku's job to protect Sora, which Ansem reminds us we failed to do. He then tells Riku that had he only just not locked away the darkness in his heart, he could have saved Sora. We then see Riku's attempt at big change, where he realizes that the answer wasn't to lock away the darkness in his heart, but to instead consume it and return it to light. This, along with being Sora's Dream Eater, gives Riku newfound purpose and a second wind of motivation. I believe his speech here with Ansem draws the point very eloquently, so I'll let that roll before we move on.
Ansem. Or Xehanort. You used to be a Keyblade wielder. But darkness stole your heart. And the Keyblade with it. Don't you see? That's half the reason I'm even on this journey. After allowing darkness into my heart, am I still fit to wield the Keyblade? Even after locking you away, here you are, haunting me again. So I get it now. There's no point in trying to hold the darkness back.
At last, you see clearly.
You know, when I look at you, there's this memory that flashes back. A secret I said I'd keep when I was little. The main reason I kept dreaming about seeing the outside world was because of him. My journey begins here. And now, I'm going back to the real world, and then to Sora's side.
That is your answer?
Yes. I know the way. Consume the darkness. Return it to light.
We then battle it out with Ansem, leading us into step number 9. Reward, consequences of attempt at change. Riku's reward is that he now has control of the darkness within him. This is beautifully symbolized by this scene after the fight, which for many I'm sure hits a lot different after Kingdom Hearts 3.
Strength to protect what matters.
Knowing now that Terra is Ansem's guardian, we see a cross between two Keyblade Masters. Terra, who bequeathed Riku, was unable to consume the darkness that lay within his heart, which led to the unfortunate fates of Aqua, Ventus, and himself. Riku, now that he has his darkness under control, in many ways finally achieved that strength to protect what matters, and now has a chance to save Sora's life. Next we have step number 10, the road back, new challenge and rededication. Riku, after defeating Ansem, finds himself in the world that never was, searching for Sora. Upon finding him, we are confronted by young Xehanort, and find out they plan to use Sora as a vessel. In order to save Sora and bring him back to Yen Sid's tower, we need to now fend off Organization 13. After fending them off with a little help from our friends, we have a new challenge on our hands, and that's waking Sora up from his slumber. This is a challenge that Riku accepts forthrightly, which will then lead us into step number 11. Resurrection. Final attempts, last-minute danger. This section of the journey can be perfectly symbolized by Riku's dive into Sora's heart. First, take note of the portal, how dark and ominous it looks. They made it clear this step in the journey wasn't going to be an easy one. We then duke it out with what appears to be Ventus's armor, possessed by darkness, with a sleeping Sora inside of it. This serves as our final boss battle of the game, and serves not only as the final obstacle of resurrecting Sora, but in Riku's own resurrection as a Keyblade Master. Rescuing Sora from this dark void would solidify Riku as a Keyblade Master, and control over the power of waking. Upon our victory over the armor, we are then transferred to Destiny Islands, leading us into our final step of the journey. Step number 12. Return with elixir. Mastery of problem. Upon our arrival, we bump into several familiar faces, prompting us with questions that require self-reflection. A fitting ending for any hero's journey. These questions: what are you so afraid of? What's the one thing you care about more than anything else? What do you wish? Perhaps these are questions we all must ask ourselves to overcome our own darkness. For at the end of these questions, we find a message in a bottle come up on the shores, followed by an appearance from Ansem the Wise, who not only tells us that the message in a bottle will be vital in the future, but that by defeating the nightmare imprisoning Sora, we have been successful in waking him up. Now, I have to admit, I'm a sucker for when a story does this. but I truly believe at the center of every story is the question, who am I? So whenever a character, after overcoming their obstacles, has a chance to identify themselves, I can't help but love it. This scene here not only achieves this so well, but given the history of Ansem the Wise and Riku, it adds an entire extra layer to the exchange.
Young man, I do not believe you ever told me your name.
It's Riku.
We then make our way back to Mysterious Tower, successful in rescuing Sora, becoming a certified master of the Keyblade, master over the darkness in our heart, and possessing vital information, courtesy of Ansem the Wise. We all know Sora gets to play hero in Kingdom Hearts 3, but it was really Riku who set the stage for his success. While Dream Drop Distance does contain a lot of lore, I truly believe the strength of the story is in the individual characters' journeys, as showcased here by our man Riku. While we do get to play as both Sora and Riku in Dream Drop Distance, I truly feel like the game was as much about Riku as it was Sora, if not more so in my opinion. But anyway, that's gonna be all I have for you guys today. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.